Thank you, Radistina, for the introduction, and thank you to the ICD for hosting this event this weekend. This time last year, I was lucky enough to study at the University of Siena in Tuscany, and I'd just come home one evening after class, and I was sitting in my living room, and it was a really nice, warm spring evening, and we had the windows open, and we could see out across the Tuscan countryside. And there was a music school nearby, and someone was playing the violin with the windows open, and it was echoing across the valley. With the birds singing, I just thought to myself at that point, this is a beautiful country. And this is really the inspiration behind my project here, the Good Country Guide, because it made me think, actually, what is it that makes a good country? Is it beauty? Is it our values as a people? Is it how good our football teams are? Or how good our food is? Or is it how much we contribute to humanitarian aid, for example? So this was the foundation and the inspiration behind this project. A perspective series to be hosted here at the ICD over the next coming months. And in this series, we will search the globe for the answers to this question of what makes a good country. And we hope to find the answers in the most unlikely of places. And in doing so, we primarily seek to learn from the experiences and innovations of others so as to grow closer together in our collective pursuit of a better world. We hope that by focusing on individual success stories, that it makes us reflect and think about where we come from, if our countries are doing enough to solve the world's problems, and if we can't take a leaf out of the books of our fellow nations. So the question is, are we just responsible for our little slice of territory, or in fact, are we responsible for the earth that we all share and the atmosphere above it? Now, we live in an age of climate change, global terrorism, pandemics, migration, economic chaos, the list goes on. These problems have grown out of control and far too complex for any one nation to solve alone. Instead of collaborating, we spend most of our time competing with each other. And this can very much be related to nation branding. Now, nation branding is described by Gheorghe Săzunde, who is a nation branding academic, as a strategic self-promotion of a country with the intention of creating reputational capital through furthering economic, political, and social interests at home and abroad. Now, often what we see with nation branding is that there is a distinct focus on economic objectives, for example, exports, tourism, and investment. The message that is portrayed at home and abroad is focused on these objectives. Now, the problem with this is that national identity, as a result, can often be misrepresented, corporatized, and selective, with little public participation. And in this sense, it's very difficult to see the difference between nation branding, public diplomacy, or even in extreme cases, propaganda, as the message seems to be incredibly one way. A top-down process involving government and big business where people are the subjects of nation branding rather than the participants. Other than vague representations of people and culture and heritage, as we can see in the Nation Branding Index, to provide the nation brand with a unique selling point, people and culture, the real people and the real culture, often have certain barriers to participating in the nation brand image. Now, it's not that I disagree with any of these individual objectives of nation branding, but it's that this narrow focus cannot be sustainable for promoting nation branding as a tool of modern statecraft and as a tool for development. Now, Simon Anholt, the founding father, or one of the founding fathers of the concept of nation branding, says that If nation branding is to be truly effective, then citizens must become the mouthpiece of any campaign. In other words, they must live the nation brand image. The reality must be connected to the brand image that's being promoted. Now, when I think of my own country, Great Britain, and the Britain is Great campaign, it's a very, very successful campaign and probably one of the most highly regarded in the world. However, what we saw with Brexit was, in fact, that there was quite a big gap between the reality and the brand image that is being promoted by this campaign. We saw that people felt left out and that they're not being properly represented. Now, I believe in nation branding, and I believe that it does have a great potential to be a tool for development and as a modern statecraft. But if this is really to be achieved, then we need to find the true meaning of culture and the true meaning of people and citizen participation, access to this nation branding architecture as we see here. Now, so this is very much the foundation behind the Good Country Guide. Collaboration between nations, what we contribute globally to the world, and active citizen participation. Now, hopefully this link works. Here we go. So the Good Country Index is an index by Simon Anholt that measures countries based on their contributions to the world. Now, this is a little secret I'm letting you into here, because this as well provides the basis behind the Good Country Guide. And as you see here, the indices to measure a country are based on science and technology, culture, international peace and security, world order, planet and climate change, prosperity and equality, and health and well-being. And they each have sub-indices in which a country is measured. Let's look at planet and climate, for example. Within these sub-indices, we have a country's ecological footprint, reforestation since 1992, and negative indicators for hazardous pesticides exports and CO2 emissions. Now, I was hoping when I discovered this that the world rankings of countries would be slightly different. Unfortunately, I didn't find that. But what I did find, taking Sweden as an example, they scored first place in overall global contribution, but we have, as we see here, 52nd place in international peace and security. And I strongly recommend you have a little flick through this, because you can find some very interesting things, as I did. So after really exploring this and coming down here, in 38th place, I found the country of Estonia. Now, something really quite interesting I found here is that in the area of culture and the contributions to culture, the tiny country of Estonia, with a population of 1.3 million people and a GDP of 39 billion, came 6th place out of 163 countries. And as you can see here, two of the main reasons are the creative goods and creative services exports. Now, just to put that in perspective, this is one place above Germany, if I can find it, with a population of 82 million and a GDP of 3.8 trillion. 5 places above the United Kingdom. Okay, it doesn't want to work anymore, so I'm just going to close that. So 5 places above the UK with a population of 65 million and a GDP of 2.8 trillion. 14 places above France, 17 above Canada, and 47 places above the United States. So after researching Estonia, I found some truly inspirational achievements. I found a country with one of the fastest internet speeds in the world, the first country to allow online voting, a country with over 600 civil services available to citizens online called e-Services, where citizens can fill out their tax returns, they can monitor their kids' school classrooms, access their medical records. I found a country that was seminal in the development of Skype. And I found a place with more startup enterprises per capita than Silicon Valley in California. Now, what is really interesting about this case and the Estonian case is that after the fall of communism, Estonian leaders invested in technological infrastructure, the use of web technologies to build an open and connected society, a collaborative project involving government, business, and tech-savvy citizens. So today, I'm especially honored to have with me here today Mrs. Kristiina Omri, the Secretary of Economic Affairs from the Embassy of Estonia to Germany, to tell us more about the innovations that have led to these interesting developments. Mrs. Omri has been in charge of the Economic and Trade Affairs in the Estonian Embassy in Berlin since 2014. Among other things, she is responsible for digitalization-related marketers such as e-government, Industries 4.0, etc. Before her posting to Berlin, Mrs. Omri took care of the business diplomacy issues of the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She has studied in the University of Tartu, University of Constance, and University of Tallinn, and holds a master's degree in sociology. Before her diplomatic career, she worked as a social and market researcher in a private sector, but also in the University of Tallinn. Besides her mother tongue Estonian, Mrs. Omri speaks English, German, Swedish, and Russian. So please could we give a round of applause for Mrs. Kristiina Omri.
Thank you for the introduction. I feel that so much has been said that I have only the possibility to maybe explain the background and how it all did come to reality. As it's about today is about the national branding, I have to say that one reason why I joined the Foreign Service of Estonia was that I realized that I'm a fan of my own country and I would like to do it 24/7 also as a work. But I was asked about to speak about the e-services and e-Estonia, that's how we call it. But before I start, I'll just say a few more words about the country itself. So it's a country on the Baltic Sea with 1.3 million inhabitants, but the size of the land what we have is a bit bigger than the Switzerland or the Netherlands. So we have a good challenge. How do we get the state to all the citizens, if they live in big cities or if they live outside of the cities? So we gained our re-independence in 1991, and we were in the phase where we had to reorganize the state, the public service, and the services for the citizens. We had luck. We had luck that our leaders at the time decided that we will make a complete restart. We will introduce the newest technology. We were offered actually to get a bit outdated hardware which was in a good condition from the Western partner countries, but our leader said, no, it will take us a bit more time, a year or two, but we want to have the most modern technology. We don't want to waste time with using the old one. We have to go and get the new one as soon as possible. So the decision was made. It will be a modern country, and we want to develop fast. So we decided, we started to modernize ourselves. But what came out in the end was that we actually modernized the meaning of governance in total. It was end of 90s. There were reasonable economic crisis in Eastern Europe at the time, and also our government had to cut the state budget. What to do? In one hand side, the challenge is big. You have to cut the budget. But at the same time, our government was relatively young and innovative. So our prime minister said that we will go for e-governance. And so the e-government was born. If you would ask if we knew at that moment that in 2017 we will be so integrated in terms of e-governance, have all the services for the companies online. Of course we didn't. So it was just the first step to, instead of printing out piles of papers for the government meetings, we went online. A year later, we introduced the signature and so on. So here it's just a timeline of the all different e-services that in Estonia are possible. So we can put the letter E in front of the most of the e-services we have in Estonia. Maybe it's because our country name also starts with E, but I think it's just a coincidence. So we have e-tax board, e-population registry, electronic voting, e-land registry, e-school, and so on, so on, so on. And we were, of course, also the first country to introduce the electronic voting on the parliamentary elections. So it happened to be, it started as an evolution and it ended as a revolution. But we've always been keen on the idea that the responsibility of the government is to reduce the bureaucracy to zero, to the minimum zero level you can do it. It all is enabled by our secure electronic identification card, which functions as a universal key to all possible electronic services. So instead of having different account usernames, passwords, PIN codes, 10, and so on, you can have just one key to your digital identity. So at the moment, it functions as the, in Germany, used Personalausweis. So you can travel with this identity card, but you can access your online bank and all the other state services. So once a child is born in Estonia and the parents want to give a name to the child, they can do it fully online themselves in the hospital before leaving it. You can access your healthcare data with it, and so on and so on. There are some key principles which have paved the way to success, so to say. The most important one we consider is to be the once-only rule. So there are different registers in a country that are responsible for gathering the data about different things. So the population registry is responsible to get your name, date of birth, and your address right. Then the car registry is responsible for having the information about your vehicles. So we have the once-only rule. So once the state already has this information about it, they shouldn't ask again. So every next authority shouldn't ask me anymore if I'm married or not, if I have children or not, and where do I live, because the National Register is responsible for it. So they have to get the data from there. Secondly, we have digital by default principle. So everything that we can make digital is digital. So it's not an extra benefit, but this is a new normality by us. This is a new standard. There are still 3 services for the citizens of Estonia, what you can't still do online, unfortunately, is to get married, to get divorced, and sell your real estate. These ones you still have to do in an office of a Bürgeramt or so. What else? Then we have also a principle called no legacy. So this means that after a certain period of time, our e-services have to be redesigned. Otherwise, it can easily lead to a situation when one service was built up at a time, long time ago, it has been modified, and then you are in a situation where no one actually knows how was the basics built up. So it leads to so-called spaghetti architecture. So by us, it's that after every 13 years, it has to be completely rebuilt. And we have the different databases are parallel. So we have still, as I told, a register for population, registry for taxes, and so on and so on. they are kept separated. We don't have in Estonia, in Tallinn, a big data server for everything and a big database for everything, so they are still separated. And of course, we have the single point of entry. So we have the so-called, in Germany, there's a wish to create a Bürgerportal. So in Estonia, we already have the citizens portal. You access it, and you have all the possible public services online there. Also, the services that are not provided on a state level, but on a municipality level, are available from there. So I can check if my child is in the kindergarten queue on the 20th or 31st place in real time. It's easy. It's easy. It's easy for the citizens, and it's easy for the entrepreneurs. And this has led to a situation where almost all Estonians, if to be correct, and 98%, fill in the taxes, the annual tax declaration online. If you are slow, it takes you 5 minutes. If you are a bit faster, it takes you 3 minutes. It's due to the fact that the tax declaration is already pre-filled for you, because your employer pays the taxes every month for you. And the tax authority already has the information, how much taxes have been paid for you in every year. And we are, of course, a big fan also of online banking. And this has been one key element to success, that the private sector has also started to use this electronic identification methods. And we use it in public when we want to use public or private services. So we use our digital identification. And what comes to banking, then almost 100% of the transactions are made online. And the amount of cash you need to carry in your pocket in Estonia is in times smaller, because you can pay everywhere with a bank card, and it doesn't have, the sum doesn't have any limits. So it's not that, oh, the thing you want to buy is less than 10 euros, you can't pay with a card. This doesn't happen in Estonia. We have, if you go to a doctor and you need a medicine that needs to be prescribed from the doctor, you don't get a paper for it. It will be sent electronically to the e-health system. And once you go to the pharmacy, you just need to have a passport or this electronic ID with you to say that, okay, this is me, I need to get my medicine now. So you don't need to run around with a paper. You don't need to worry about losing the paper. It all runs online. And with all this, we still like some numbers. This all leads to the situation where we can save the money and the time of our citizens and entrepreneurs. And we can say that in total, in every year, every person in Estonia saves at least 1 week due to the possibility of using the services and online or the electronic signature. And when we then count this 1 week in a year to our GDP, then this is 2% of our GDP. And those ones who know what's the NATO contribution, every NATO country has to contribute to the security yearly, is exactly 2%. So we can say that we actually save the money from being innovative and modern and pay with this money for our security. So, and if this is not enough, then it's hard to find more convenient or more convincing arguments. At least that's what we believe. Just a quick just a quick slide about the architecture of the electronic state in Estonia. So we have, so to say, an X road. And we have the different databases, be it from the public side or private side, that are all connected to it. It's possible for the databases to get information from another database, but it's always predefined, and it has to be authorized by our yeah, how it's in English at the moment, data protection authority. So it's not that our Prime Minister would like to print out the information about all Estonian citizens. This is not possible. So you have only the access to the data to which you have right to. This is also the first key of our security model for the e-state. So you only get access to the data you have right to. And unlike on the paper, once you have the information digital, you can actually track who has access to your data. One key principles of our e-state is also that we don't have any backdoors. So for none of the services in Estonia, there doesn't exist any backdoors. So you can't check the data without a tracking possibility. So you couldn't build up this model without transparency and trust. And under transparency, I mean that for me as an Estonian citizen, I can check also in this Bürgerportal or the Citizens Portal who has access to my data. And in case I have doubts that Mr. or Mrs. XY has checked my data every day for a week, for example, and it doesn't seem me logical anyhow. I can always ask from the data protection agency to check the issue. And on the other hand side, it also makes me actually, it doesn't go together with the security model, but it also goes together with that in this way I'm actually the owner of my data. Be it the electronic health record or something else, I can actually have the full overview of the data. Usually, and also before we introduced the e-healthcare, the data about your healthcare, the doctor has the folder, they look at it, they say, okay, everything's good. Or they look at the folder and say, you have to take vitamin D, I don't know, for 2 months and you'll be feeling good. You have to ask separately, what's exactly behind this, or what was the diagnosis, or especially in the cases when you move from one city to another or one country to another, it's really hard to take your healthcare data from one place to another because it's the doctors will not easily give it away. They maybe make you copies if you really ask them several times. But with this electronic model, you are actually the owner of the data. So you can see the results of the blood test or anything else if you have interest. And you can also easily show to another doctor in another country who's not yet connected to the e-health the information about your healthcare data from the past. It all is possible if you have then the different key players support. So you have the public sector who's willing to introduce the new KE elements. You have the private sector who also starts using it. By us, it was the banking sector, who also contributed to schooling the elderly people to use the electronic services because they saw they would save much more. It would save much of their time if the people wouldn't come to the bank office to take out the money or make the monthly transaction, if they would do it online. The civil society and so on. So you have a big spillover effects. People just get used to the modern technology and you have the spillover also to the private sector. If they notice that their state is more modern than their own enterprise, they will be more willing to modernize their business model. So where is the future? We still think that the future starts with E, be it smart cities and all possible electronic and digital services there. What we have introduced 2 years ago, 2014, already 3 years actually, was the e-residency. So before we had all this infrastructure available only for our citizens or people living in Estonia. Since end of 2014, we made it possible also for the foreigners to get this digital identification card. So this means that a person living somewhere abroad, but who would, for example, like to run a business or register a company in a country where the bureaucracy would run smoothly, could do it. So they could apply for the e-residency. They will get exactly this kind of blue card, which I showed you before. It will not have a photo on it, so you can't use it as a passport or actual identification card in the real world for traveling. But you have the access to our electronic services. So you can establish a business in Estonia in 18 minutes, and you can run the business online there. What we are thinking about now, or what we are actually already developing, is how to offer proactive services to the citizens. So far it has been so that once you have the right to any sort of tuition, you have to go to office yourself and apply for it. But there are a lot of tuitions which actually come automatically and don't depend on your salary and so on and so on. So once a child is born, you have a certain tuition. So we're thinking about providing, so to say, the services proactively, because the social care system anyway knows once you have registered your child that, okay, you have a child now, you have right to this and this money. So why not write an email to your citizen and say, okay, you will from the next month get this allowance. If you don't want it, then push here and you will not get it. So that's actually pretty much. We strongly believe that this has enabled us to save time, to have time for new ideas. And also we believe that this is also one of the reasons we have so many startups enterprises in Estonia. So the startup enterprise doesn't want to run around in different public authorities with a pile of paper. They just want to do their thing. And we'll try to keep it also this way in the future. I have today here with me Mr. Valdek, who's actually one example of Estonian startup and who has personal experiences with it as Estonian, but also as an Estonian entrepreneur. So maybe we would like to join me here on the stage, because I'm finished with my presentation.
Yes, maybe I can say a few words. So my name is Valdek. I'm a founder of a startup here in Berlin. We're actually running the business here in Germany, in Berlin, since 3.5 years back, started in Estonia. And from our perspective, why I'm glad to, let's say, vouch this as what Estonia is doing as a citizen, as a startup founder, is because Estonia really is giving the tools to do things. I think it's all about the tools. So it's okay that it takes 18 minutes to start a business, but in the end, how much time do you spend, let's say, with bureaucracy in your company? So if you spend 10%, 15% of it, or maybe in Estonia, I would say 1% of it, it makes a huge difference, because in the first year you're in business, you need to close deals, you need to get your product ready. But if you spend a lot of time that, let's say, bureaucracy, it won't happen that fast. So all of this, let's say, the tools is something that empowers the most, I would say. And the second thing is really the mindset also, because if people, let's say, grow up with this, let's say, digital society, having the tools to start their own company, they see the benefits of it, and also when they using that, and when they build the products, how they can build something globally using digital tools, that makes also a big difference. So now why I think we see so many startups in Estonia is that this kind of mindset that has been there the last 20, 25 years really sets in and kind of makes a difference. So that's one note I wanted to end with, and that's all for me. Thanks.
Do we take any questions or?
Exactly. I would like firstly to thank you very much for your wonderful presentation and for sharing with us this incredible achievement, actually. So they're very in Estonia. And if you let us to invite our audience for question and comment. Yes?
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was great. I'm from Belarus. My name is Vlad. And I heard a lot of positive stories about what you did in Estonia. And it's amazing. So Belarus have to learn. If you can share your experience, will be great. Because we're in the same position. We just get independence at the same time. Just would like to ask you about problems when you implement your e-system with the elderly generation and disabled people. I mean, if it's a disabled person who do not have any relative, if he needs to submit any form, do you have support from the government? Or if it's elderly person who do not know how to use a laptop or computer, or maybe do not have any computer, what services they can do in office? And also, if the person would like to keep the printed copy, if it's still possible, of any documentation, or everything is online. Thank you.
I have a really quick answer to this. First of all, for the citizens, there is always also the analog possibility for the services. There is always this analog possibility. So if there's a indigenous person in the forest who really doesn't have electricity nor internet, they can still go to office. It's just the reality is that the usage of this electronic services is so high that no one actually uses this paper-based possibility anymore. But we have been in the process almost for 20 years. So it also goes with the generations. So the people who were old 20 years ago are maybe, yes, in a more difficult situation now, but the person who are 70 were 50 at the time, or 60 at the moment, and they were 40 at the time. So they had a possibility to get acquainted to the system. And there were different schooling possibilities also. Classes, how to use internet for the elderly people and so on. Yeah.
Hi, that was really amazing. I just wanted to ask, for let's say a dual national who wants to open a business in Estonia, what are the tax implications, please?
I can't answer it so quickly because with this e-residency we haven't changed the international tax laws. It still matters where your company is actually active, where is the value created, but especially for the companies, like also in your case, if you have offices in different places, your co-workers are working somewhere in airplane between San Francisco and Dubai. So nowadays the question of the place where the activities are taking place, it's really difficult, and especially for those kind of people when you are not connected to one piece of land in one place so strongly, it's one of the possibilities.
Thank you very much. One more time, dear Miss Kristiina Omri and Bruno. Thank you very much.